morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, How to Get Feedback When Public Speaking. And of course, I'd welcome any feedback from this webinar. As you're viewing it, if you watch the recording, feedback for Peter Dew. What did he do well? What could he do differently? What would make it more engaging? So Peter Dew is my name, public speaking trainer and coach. And I want to talk to you about the importance of feedback when public speaking. Now, here's the big thing with feedback with public speaking. Because many of us have that overwhelming fear or that overwhelming sense that we're not doing a good job, feedback's one of those things that often gives us information that we're unaware, information that we're doing okay, information that was valuable. And it helps to silence the self-doubt. So while feedback, yes, is for continuous improvement, how to change and grow and do better, it's also to reinforce that from the audience's perspective, you're actually doing a fairly good job. From the audience's perspective, your racing heart, your shaking hands, your quivering voice, the audience doesn't see that and they think you're looking confident. They think you're looking confident. So welcome to the webinar, How to Get Feedback when Public Speaking. As always, please ask questions as we go. Type something in the comment box, take notes, participate. Maybe you've got other ways of getting feedback, other tools you can use, and think about what you might do moving forward. How are you going to gain feedback from your next presentation? How are you going to gain feedback from the next meeting that you chair or the next meeting that you run? So first of all, what should feedback look like? There's a thought that any feedback is valuable, and be aware of unsolicited feedback. The person who comes up to you after the meeting and says, "Oh, yeah, I really noticed you do a lot of ums and ahs. You've got some really distracting hand movements that just flap around." Beware of unsolicited feedback. Rather, I think you should take ownership and shape and create in your feedback loop. So what should feedback look like? Some simple things that I try and encourage people to do. Make it immediate. No point me telling you that presentation you did 3 months ago. I noticed you were doing a bit of nervous walking on the catwalk, a bit like a cat on a hot tin roof. Needs to be specific. What do I mean by that? Feedback such as, that was really good, that was nice, that was lovely. What can you do with that to take the next step for continuous improvement? Or feedback like, yeah, you bombed that one a little bit, didn't you? Well, it wasn't your best effort. Why wasn't my best effort? What specifically did you notice? Needs to be actionable. I am a person who stutters, and in my presentations, in a one-day workshop, I will stutter. I tend to be okay in half-hour webinars, but even in webinars, I still sometimes struggle to get out words. And if the feedback is, "Peter, if you stuttered less, you'd be more effective." Thanks, but I can't do anything about that. It's not something I can change as a person who stutters. I can do my best to be fluent, but the stutter is always there. So make sure when you give feedback or when you seek feedback from someone that it's something you want to work on that's actionable and honest. You need to give people permission to give you honest feedback. If you don't give them that permission, they're likely to gloss over and you'll get that, "Yeah, that was nice, very good, very helpful, thank you." Because people won't have the courage to give you that specific feedback. So in my workshops, I always ask permission up front for me to give you 1 or 2 things that I noticed that I think if you changed would help you improve your public speaking. Immediate, specific, actionable, and give people permission to be honest. So sources of feedback. And with feedback, understand there's no failures, there's only feedback. So when I do give my opinion of what I see people do, it's just through my lens. It's from my perspective. And with any feedback, you as the speaker, you as the receiver of feedback, have the option of choosing what you wish to do with that. Some feedback is nice, but you decide, I'm not going to do anything with that. Other feedback is something you're unaware of, and it just lets you know that you're doing something that you were unaware of, and you now have the power to change and move forward and improve that. No failure, just feedback. So sources of feedback. Ask a colleague. You're going to a meeting, you're going to a presentation, you're presenting to the whole of the company. Who's those 1 or 2 colleagues that you can brief beforehand and say, hey, I'm feeling a little bit nervous. This is an important presentation, an important sales pitch, an important project update. I would love you to give me feedback at the end of the meeting. And I'd love you to give feedback on my use of filler words. Yeah, like I use lots of filler words, and if I could reduce them, that would be really helpful. Specific. I notice that when I present, I tend to look to the roof or to the wall. Today, could you give me feedback on how well I make eye contact and how well I look down the barrel of the camera, how well I look at my audience and have those conversations? So ask a colleague, someone you know and trust, to give you immediate feedback. It may be your boss, maybe a subordinate, but the more information you give them around what you're looking for in the feedback, the more targeted that feedback can be. And if they throw in something else that you know you can't do anything about, you can reject that and appreciate the feedback you get. And the other stuff you can say, well, I'm going to put that under the table. And one of the feedbacks might be, yeah, you didn't use any ums and ahs. You got rid of all your filler words, but gee, you speak really, really fast. And if you could slow down a little bit, you'd be much better than speaking fast. Now, if you are a fast speaker, it is very hard to slow down. So if your aim was to reduce your ums and ahs and you achieve that, then you can consider that a success. Maybe hard to slow down. You can use more pauses, more patches of silence to make it look like you're speaking at a slower rate. Sources of feedback, ask a stranger. So you're now presenting at a forum. It's not with colleagues, it's not with team members. And there's always that person who arrives early, the early bird, the early arrivers. I always shake hands. I love the early arrivers. I greet, I have a chat. What are you here for? What would you like to learn from me? Hey, by the way, would you do me a favour? In my first 5 minutes, could you just count my ums and ahs for me? And at the end of my presentation, just let me know whether you thought there was a lot of ums and ahs or if there was very few. Look, I do a little bit of an Irish jig. Today, what I want to do is I want to try and stand still. I'd love your impression of whether I'm standing still as a presenter or whether I'm still a little bit nervous and doing that Irish jig. Ask a stranger. They can give you feedback after the meeting. They can give you feedback via email later on. If they move on and someone else comes on and speaks and the meeting gets or the conference gets too busy, they can send you that feedback via email. Video record your presentation. If you're at a bigger conference, there's often a video production centre there. and the conference organizer will get your permission to record. If I was saying yes, and they want to stream it or they want to show it to members, certified practicing accountants, those people that want to buy access to the conference, but they can't attend in person, if I was going to give my permission to record, I would say, can I have a copy of that file? The other thing, of course, is hand over your mobile phone to a colleague, to a friend, even to a stranger, and just say, hey, wouldn't mind you recording my presentation. Or you can put on a little tripod off to the side, no one needs to see it, and that video is on you, not on the audience, because you don't have permission to record your audience, but you don't need permission to record yourself presenting. With that video, you now have the ability to self-coach, count your own ums and ahs, observe your own eye contact, observe your own little Irish dance, or that waltz, should you have one. You can email the video file to a colleague, to a coach, or a mentor, someone you trust, and they can give you impartial feedback on that video. Here's the thing with video. The video does not lie. If there's 25 ums in the first 5 minutes, you count them, there is 25 ums in the first 5 minutes. If your eye contact is up at the roof and you're just not making contact with people in the room, the video does not lie. If you're going to self-coach, just a word of caution, you need to disassociate, separate yourself from the person in the video. So you become an impartial observer of the speaker who you're watching in the video, and you're noticing that person is using quite a few ums and ahs. That person is waltzing back and forth a lot. Not, gee, I'm doing lots of ums and ahs. Gee, I'm looking really nervous. You need to disassociate yourself from the person in the video. Otherwise, you'll become paralyzed by looking at yourself and self-criticism, and you'll become self-conscious, and it won't be an impartial coaching session. If someone sent you that video of that person, what would you say to that person? It just so happens that person is you, but for the self-coaching purpose, you need to separate the two. And now that you have the video, there's a couple of things you can do. There's some AI apps, some artificial intelligence. One is called the coach's eye. The coach's eye is used in sports. So think of golf swings, baseball swings. And what a coach will do is they'll video you, and then they'll coach you for technique improvement. And then they'll coach you, then they'll video you a week later or 2 weeks later after you've done practice and you've done coaching, and they'll see the before video and the after video side by side. The screen is split with coach's eye. You can do that with public speaking. So you can record yourself at one presentation, looking at the ums and ahs, do that self-feedback. Then the next presentation, you might focus on reducing your ums and ahs, reducing your dance or your swaying, your looking to the roof, and you now have 2 videos side by side, the before or speech 1, 3 weeks ago, and speech 2, which you just did yesterday, and you can compare the improvement or the change of the 2 videos. The other artificial intelligence is called Udely.ai. And you can run your video through Udely, and Udely will give you some metrics around your presentation. How much eye contact down the camera. It'll count your ums and ahs and filler words. Udely will count extraneous words. Words like what we're actually talking about here actually doesn't actually mean much. And actually, if I didn't use the word actually, I'd make more sense actually. Obviously, what we have here is a miscommunication. And obviously moving forward, I obviously don't want this to happen again. So if all of us get together, obviously, and we do this workshop, obviously, I think this will never happen again. Basically, what we have here, basically, is a misunderstanding, basically. They're extraneous words. It will look at some of your nonverbal communications. It will let you know the pace at which you speak, and whether it's a nice pace, maybe too fast, or if it's too slow, whether you use pauses or silence effectively. And it'll also pick out gender, non-appropriate words, or non-inclusive words. And it gives you a transcript. And you can use that transcript to polish and change for your next presentation. So Udly is a very cool artificial intelligence app that you can use as practice, and you can use to review an existing speech. Video camera is really powerful. A little bit scary. So we need to disassociate ourselves when we're looking at ourselves on video. Do a feedback survey. After each of my workshops, I send out a short questionnaire. What did I do well? What aspects did you like about the speaker? His engagement, his variety of nonverbal communication, my gestures. What would you like the speaker to do differently to improve it even further? More content, too much content. Too long a time period, that should be done in half a day. All of that feedback from the survey enables me to grow. But once again, I've got to give people permission to give me honest feedback. And I can guide them as well. So what did I do well? And I can put in brackets examples. Use of pause, spoke at a good pace, information was useful, engaged the audience. And what could I do differently? Reduce my ums and ahs, make it more engaging. So the feedback I get is not just it was good or it was bad, it was specific and actionable for me to do. And I also announce up front in my workshop, at the end of the workshop, I'm going to give you a feedback form, and I would value your feedback. Your feedback is how I grow, how I improve, how I deliver a better product. Practice in a mirror. Really good for practicing important presentations. You learn to present without a script. You might have a script by you to start with. It's a bit of paper and you have that by you, and you practice in front of the mirror. Really good for growing these non-verbal communication, the gestures, 2 points, 3 points, maybe you want to share. How do you bring an audience together? How do you urge caution? What do you do when you're not gesturing? What's your resting position? Avoid the fig leaf, the shoulder shrinking. Avoid trying to be aggressive, being aggressive or closed in your approach, or the aggressive stance. You can watch this in front of the mirror and grow your gestures. Maybe you want to eliminate the bouncy, noisy flapping of hands. And if this is something you've had feedback on in the past, as if conducting an orchestra, the mirror will give you immediate feedback, and you'll know to make gestures. You'll be able to bring people together. Maybe you need to layer 2 or 3 points on top of each other. And when you're finished, you just rest your hands in a nice, neutral, credible position. The mirror gives us great feedback. One thing that I want to urge caution: avoid self-feedback. I've mentioned about using a video and self-coaching and the importance to disassociate That's where you become analytical, not critical, analytical, and you watch the person in the video. But self-feedback as you're presenting or after the presentation, when you say to yourself, I should have done that, I could have done that, I really mucked up on that area, I missed this out, I forgot that bit completely, I would avoid that and try and silence that internal critic. Because it's not about you, the speaker. It's not about you, the presenter. It's not about you, the facilitator. It's about your audience. And if the audience said that was really valuable, I learned a lot from that. You're a very engaging speaker. Your self-feedback, your self-analysis, your self-doubt, your self-criticism becomes irrelevant. Here's the thing. If I think I've done a really good job in a presentation, I've covered all my points. I've absolutely nailed my content. And the feedback from the audience is, Peter, that was a waste of my time. That was of no use whatsoever. And I bombed. I failed in that presentation. Yet I've done such a good job in my mind, but in the audience's mind, I haven't given them any value, anything they can use. And there's the other presentation, when you were really nervous, when I was nervous, my heart rate was increasing. I don't think I covered all my content. I was really self-conscious and I thought I did a really bad job. And the feedback was that I nailed my presentation. I was one of 10 conference speakers, high-profile speakers, and I was rated by the audience, 250 people, as number 2 in the room. Of 10, I was the second most appreciated, the second most valuable speaker. Yet in my mind, I'd done a terrible job. So if I think I've done a bad job and the audience thinks I've done a good job, then I've done a good job. This is where self-feedback of how you think you've done is irrelevant. It is about the audience. If the audience thinks you've done a really good job, you've done a really good job. If the audience thinks you could improve in this area, there wasn't much value, then you haven't done as good a job as you thought. Avoid self-feedback. You seem to put yourself in the center of the equation, but once again, it's not about you. You need to put the audience in the center of the equation and get feedback from them and change and grow and improve based on what the audience thinks and perceives you as a speaker. So in summary, what should feedback look like? Immediate, specific, actionable, and honest. Sources of feedback: ask a colleague, ask a stranger, do a video presentation. Then there's those artificial intelligence, Coach's Eye and Udemy that you can use to add some value to the video, or send the video off to a coach or a mentor. Do a survey, practice in front of the mirror. And while you may do some self-analysis of a video, avoid that self-feedback while you're presenting and after you've spoken. That self-denigration, that I mucked up this, I should have, I could have, avoid that. And wait for feedback from the audience and use that to guide your improvement and the changes you make. Next webinars, for those of you who are webinar junkies, 20th of February, how to deal with fear of what others think of you, FOMO, fear of negative evaluation. We stand up in front of a group and in our mind we say, oh, I hope they like us. I hope they don't think I'm an imposter. 1st of March, should we reveal our vulnerability? I spoke to you today briefly about my stuttering. Should I reveal that? Should you reveal your self-doubt? Should you reveal your journey to success required quite a few mishaps? We won't call them failures, just mishaps and lessons on the way. Should you reveal that? Or is that a sign of weakness? And in April, 5 tips to help you prepare for that unexpected public speaking, that off the cuff, that Over to you, Peter, and you're thrown in the deep end. Workshops coming up. February, Port Hedland, 2 stations left. Melbourne, 28th of March, winning presentation skills, 3 or 4 spots left. Thinking and speaking off the cuff, 29th of March in Melbourne. Once again, 2 or 3 spots. Love to have you there. Peter Dew's my name. Love your feedback. Would welcome your feedback, specific, please. You know how to reach me. If I can be of any assistance, if you have a webinar topic that you think would be valuable, how do I control nerves? Peter, how do you speak without notes? Send me an email and I'd love to do a webinar, a short 25, 30-minute webinar on a topic that's of value to you. So remember, feedback is the food of champions. Make it specific. There's a whole range of ways of getting feedback. Every time you present, and I ask you to put in 1 or 2 means of getting a feedback. Feedback is how you grow, how you learn. This is Peter Dew, public speaking trainer and coach.